They slept on a platform of plastered mud. A hand's depth under it, they buried their dead. Thousands of people, 1,000 years, no king, no palace, no temple. We still don't really understand them. This is Çatalhöyük, in central Turkey, one of the largest settlements of the Neolithic world. People lived here, packed together for around 1,100 years. It is often called the world's first city. It wasn't, quite. No streets, no palace, no temple, no monuments. And that absence is the mystery. Not who built it, not how. It is dug as thoroughly as almost any site on Earth. It is why thousands chose to live like this, with no one in charge. Çatalhöyük sits on the Konya Plain, occupied continuously from roughly 7,100 to about 6,000 BC, some 1,150 years, stacked into 21 meters of mud brick, layer on layer. It had no streets. The houses were built directly against each other, wall to wall, no gaps, no paths. There were no front doors. You crossed the rooftops, and you climbed down a ladder through a hole in your own roof. Inside, the walls were plastered smooth and replastered, year after year. Set into them, projecting into the living space, were the horns and plastered skulls of wild cattle, aurochs, watching the room. And under the floor were the dead. Burial here was domestic, bodies tightly flexed, laid beneath the platforms people slept on. Archaeologists have recovered the remains of at least 741 individuals. Graves were reopened. Skulls and jaws were lifted out, carried, circulated, some replastered and painted with ochre to remodel a face. The living, the excavators write, shared their houses with their ancestors, both physically and symbolically. Some houses gathered more of this. More burials, more bull skulls, more paint, rebuilt on the same spot for generations. The archaeologist Ian Hodder calls them history houses, a place that kept its dead close and kept no rulers at all. The man who found it would become almost as strange a story as the site. Çatalhöyük was found by a British archaeologist, James Mellaart. He surveyed it in 1958 and dug it for 4 seasons, 1961 to 1965. Mellaart had a gift for spectacular finds, and a problem with them. In the 1960s, he published drawings of a hoard of treasures, the so-called Doric treasure, that he said he'd been shown privately. He could never produce the objects. The woman who supposedly showed them could never be traced. The affair eventually got him banned from excavating in Turkey. Work at Çatalhöyük lapsed. It did not resume properly until Ian Hodder began a new excavation in 1993. A project that would run for some 25 years. Then in 2018 came the part that should make you careful. After Mellaart's death, the geoarchaeologist Eberhard Zanger of the Leeuwen Studies Foundation examined Mellaart's London apartment. What he found were prototypes. Mellaart's own working drafts of ancient murals and inscriptions he had presented as real discoveries. Invented Çatalhöyük wall paintings, a fabricated ancient text. In some cases, Mellaart had said the originals were destroyed before anyone else could record them. The man who found one of the most important sites in the world also forged things. But here is the line this video will not blur. The forgeries were Mellaart's own later fabrications, things he could not back up. The site is not one of them. Çatalhöyük has been re-excavated for 25 years, under modern controls, by a large international team that owes Mellaart nothing. The mound, the houses, the burials, the bones. Independently documented again and again. A forger found it. That does not make it a forgery. Mellaart left one more thing, a story about who these people worshipped. In 1961, he found in a grain bin a small baked clay figure of a heavyset woman seated between 2 leopard-like armrests, the seated woman of Çatalhöyük. Mellaart read her, in the other female figurines, as a great mother goddess. Proof, he argued, of a goddess-centered, matriarchal religion. For decades, that reading traveled far beyond archaeology. Then the site was dug again, properly. Hodder's team, with the archaeologist Lynn Meskel, went back through the figurines, including material Mellaart had thrown onto spoil heaps. Mellaart had highlighted a handful of female figures. The full sample told a different story. The great majority of the figurines are animals, not women. The site shows little sign of matriarchy, and little sign of patriarchy either. The great goddess of Çatalhöyük was, to a large degree, an artifact of what Mellaart chose to show us. That should have been the end of the question. It wasn't, because in 2025, the bones said something, and it is not what the myth said. The difference between the two is the whole point. In 2025, a team published ancient DNA from the people buried under those floors. The finding is careful, and it has a shape in time. That shape is the point. The household lines appear to have run through women. Maternal lineage is more central than paternal to how houses were formed across the life of the town. But the blood did not stay. In the earliest houses, the people buried together were close biological relatives. Over the generations that faded, the people sharing a house and a grave became steadily less related to one another, as if households were increasingly built by fostering, adoption, and belonging rather than by birth. Now hold two things apart because everything depends on it. This is not Mellaart's goddess. The researchers deliberately avoided the word matriarchy. They said female-centered. Not a goddess cult, not a matriarchal religion, not the 1960s myth coming back vindicated. It is something quieter, a town whose households ran along the mother's line, and that over time slowly stopped being held together by blood at all. It does not perfectly match the earlier work, but it points the same way. A 2019 study of the skeletons had already found that, taken across the whole sequence, people buried in one house were largely not close kin, what the authors called practical kinship and not biological kinship. The 2025 genetics adds the missing dimension when that became true, a question being rewritten in real time with better tools, and not finished yet. It is tempting to make Çatalhöyük a Neolithic utopia. The bones do not allow it. At its height, the period archaeologists call the middle, the population peaked and the town became the most crowded it ever was. How many people exactly is genuinely disputed. Estimates run from a few hundred in an average year to several thousand at the peak, and that range is an open argument, not a settled number. What the crowding did is clearer. Of 93 skulls examined, 25 carried healed depressed fractures, struck on the head, hard, and survived. Slightly more women than men, 13 to 10. 12 people had been hit more than once, up to 5 times. The injuries are consistent with hard clay sling balls, crowding bred more than violence. Microscopic layers near the houses held human and animal waste and parasite eggs. Signs of infection in the bones track with the density. As the town packed tighter, herders drove their animals further and further out to feed them. These were not people living lightly, in harmony with the land. They were thousands of human beings pressed into mud brick, burying their dead under the bed, taking blows to the skull, and staying anyway for 1,000 years. The question is what held it together. And the answer the evidence gives is uncomfortable. Here is what the absence of kings does not prove. In 2024, a study measured inequality at Çatalhöyük across its whole life. Access to staple food, the bread, the basics, was broadly equal between households. No one feasted while a neighbor starved. But the other things, productive capacity, the goods that were not about bare survival, were not equally held. In the middle period there was, in the author's words, meaningful economic differentiation, real inequality, and then something pushed it back down. Their phrase is the one to keep, that inequality was dramatically tamped down by what looks like active, perhaps conscious effort to stop rising disparity from hardening into rank. No rulers, no permanent, institutionalized hierarchy. But equality here may not have been natural. It may have been worked at, something the community did, deliberately, generation after generation. And the scholars do not agree how far it goes. Mellaart read the differences in houses and grave goods as real social inequality. Hodder argued for what he called fierce egalitarianism. The 2024 study lays the dispute out, and in its own words, leaves it open. Some researchers find social inequality where others find no or limited social disparity. That unresolved paradox, no rulers, equal bread, difference suppressed, is not a gap in the story. It is the story. For this story, the open questions are not a footnote. They are the whole point. We do not know why thousands of people chose to live this way, packed wall to wall, entering through the roof, with no central authority, no monument, no one in charge, and then doing it without a break for 1,100 years. No accepted explanation exists for how that held. We do not know whether the equality was real or enforced. The food was shared evenly. The difference was pushed down. By whom? Through what? There is no institution we can point to. We do not know what made a household. Not, in the end, blood. The lines ran through women, and the people under one floor grew less related over time, not more. What family even meant here is being rewritten right now, and is not yet settled. We do not know why so many of them were struck on the head, and survived and stayed. And we do not know why they left. The population fell, the town loosened, the people scattered, and by around 6000 BC, Çatalhöyük was abandoned. No catastrophe in the record explains it. They buried their dead under their beds, kept the skulls of wild bulls watching their rooms, built no king, and held it together for 1,000 years, then walked away and left us a hill with every answer in it except the ones we most want. We still don't know why they came or why they stopped.